Welcome, customers, capitalists, and maybe even our competitors to this month's Deliver More episode, where I am still your host, Francesca Vavala with InTech MKT, here to ask Mike Patterson. Say hi, Mike.
Hello, everyone.
And Chris Lord. Well, let's make that Wolfie. You want to say hi, Wolf?
Hello.
About Teflon's competition. So this is a little unusual for us today because we're usually talking only about Teflon. But this time we're going to be taking a look at Teflon's direct competition to figure out, what has been happening with all these volatile times that so many institutional coating companies and coating related companies have gone through recently. And where does that leave the actual coaters? We'll also talk about Teflon's biggest competition, their number one competitor, and where that stands. And we're going to get them a little honest about Chemours and Florigistics and tell you how to never get caught short on the coatings. And finally, you guys will learn today about how much choosing the right supplier can make or break your business. Because that's what Mike and Wolf do. They're here to help you navigate the best way to improve your standing for your business. And that's a lot that we've got to get to it. So,
Wow.
Or got to get to a lot.
I thought we were here to make or break busibusinesses when you were leading into that. I was like, wow, I didn't know we had that big of a job.
No pressure. Just make or break them, guys. And, I see everybody here is fully clothed, which is great because I was wondering if you were feeling a little exposed, maybe a little naked with this topic. Because, we're not just talking about the greatest parts of Teflon. How are you guys feeling coming into this?
I mean, I would say that we talk about our competition all the time. So I don't really feel too exposed. And I'd like to think that we're pretty transparent with everybody with regard to what's happening with Florigistics, with our product line, et cetera. So a little exposed, but not too bad.
Yeah, I think the customers are, they're pretty revealing as well sometimes because, everybody's kind of struggling along a little bit just about, where I get coatings from and, the support they're getting and things like that. So we've been hearing a lot, especially over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Francesca, what you don't know is Chris covers the West Coast. So he may be out of work for a little while as he's sequestered as a witness in the Diddy trial.
Well, since we are here to talk about your competition, I thought we could kick things off with just a quick competition with you guys. And, you say you talk about your competition all the time. So what if I gave you 20 seconds and take turns coming up with as many competitors to Teflon as you can?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. So
globally?
Globally, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, you can go anywhere with this starting now. Mike?
PPG.
Wolf?
Solvay.
Mike?
Daikin.
Wolf?
Cerakote.
Mike?
Atchison. Are they still around?
Cavero.
Mike?
Please. Elog.
Time. That is time.
Ooh, I had another one.
It was almost time for me too. I had another one. Who did you have, Wolfie?
Sandstrom.
Oh, good one. I had Arkema. But again, are they still around?
Arkema was like one of the last ones. I think PVDF. I think.
Oh yeah, they have that. But some of those, I'm like, I think.
That's the thing. Is like
drink while
change.
You think. You've ever played that game?
Never heard of it. No.
I'm sure.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of competition, and I think you named it right off the gate. Your number one competitor used to go by a different name, Whitford, and now we go by PPG. Mike, if you can you talk to us a little bit about how Whitford/PPG is so competitive with Teflon?
Well, I think it's a situation with Whitford and PPG, and I'm probably going to call them Whitford all the time, just like I'm just kind of stuck after doing this enough years. But they, it's interesting to watch their progression in the time that I've been involved because they went from being a supplier that had a pretty damn good product that was usually a lot less expensive to a competitor that had a much broader product line over time. that was much higher quality, compared to the past, and still had a relatively lower price point than a lot of our materials. So they really improved over time as it got to just their product performance and value. It's been interesting to watch that, and I will say it's they're a great competitor. They pushed us in a lot of ways to make the products better, to make our services better. I've said it before on this show, like that's what drove me in the past to make decisions I did about how to support the industry. Is I wanted to be the one that had the best service and the easiest to get responsiveness from, because I knew that was weaknesses of theirs. And then today it's a glaring weakness for them.
So you think like product wise, it's always been pretty straightforward. You could switch one in kind for another. People could go back and forth based on availability or services or preferences or whatever. But
Well, it's like one of those things when something's specified, it's supposed to be kind of hard to change, but a lot of
Right.
times when there's something it's not available, it becomes pretty easy to switch to a competitive material. And so yeah, like the Whitford solvent-based products are very, very similar to our 958, 954 line materials. They have a one coat solvent-based system that's just like our 420 line. They have a three coat water-based system that's ceramic reinforced, just like our 857 line. Powders, there's a number of things they have that are very, very comparable to what Chemours has in their product mix today.
yeah.
Hey, and we copied them too. I mean, don't forget when
No,
you came up with
no,
the blue, coating for oil and gas. I
no,
mean,
we
that
didn't.
was that was,
A
that
completely
really their
original
brainchild.
idea.
And that, hey, you know what? It's you never know where we're going to get a good idea from. So, but that got us into that mix, and hopefully we can really start making some headway in that industry.
Yeah,
Yeah. So go
Francesca, I
ahead.
think there's a type of thing that there's market demand, and then there's also like customer demand in like something like the oil and gas coating. It straight up was customer demand. The market was happy with the performance of the Whitford material. The customers weren't happy with the performance of the supply chain on that
Right.
side of the house. So that's what it really came down to, is people saying like, if you could get me a coating that will do this at this price point, then yeah, that would be great to have, because we're running into a ton of problems and not being able to do our job as a coating supplier. So, that's an interesting one where we just had to meet a supply chain demand in order to have access to that market.
Yeah, and they don't want a market that's monopolized by one company that's one offering, and they
Right.
lose a lot of power,
Mhm.
that way. It's like, well, here's my price, and there's nobody else in this industry. And we did, for a little while, did bust it up a little bit, and we, had some supply constraints, but hopefully we're getting back on track now. And they want us down there. They want a nice, good competitor down there just to keep
Keeps everybody on their
everything
toes.
stable. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the whole idea of capitalism, and that healthy competition and letting the customers decide in the market determining their value in it. So I think that's great that Mike, your perspective on Whitford as something that drove you to be better, to provide more
Hmm.
service is really a powerful way to look at your competition that lets you perform rather than be fearful of them outperforming you. And I think that shows obviously in the business that you've been able to carry on. And obviously, Whitford isn't Whitford anymore because PPG bought it, which I'm sure sent shockwaves through the entire coatings universe because a lot changed with that acquisition. Wolfie, what differences have you seen, and does it change how you view Whitford competitively to Teflon, or would it change how the customers maybe view Whitford or PPG competitively to Teflon?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that came out was just the support that they were getting. Either, reps, they don't really have that, group of folks supporting their portfolio like they used to. A lot of those guys were let go as PPG kind of transitioned to this model where,
Or
you know,
left or retired.
well, they left and
Yeah.
retired.
Yeah.
But they changed to this model where, they were taking their reps that were supporting the PPG business and like, hey, don't forget to sell this coating too, because we now have, the Whitford Performance, coating line. And I mean, here's what's going to happen in that situation. You're always going to fall back to where you're comfortable. If I know powder coatings and the industrial coatings really well, but man, I don't know a damn thing about the what we just bought. The guys I'm going to be seeing are going to be the guys that are going to buy powders and industrial coatings off me. If they're like, yeah, don't forget to go see this guy that does a lot of floor polymers or Teflon, you're going to shy away from that. I mean, if you're not,
Tough
brought,
visit.
yeah, if you're not brought into the fold and you don't know, what's going on with those coatings or how they're applied or anything like that, you're just going to stay away from it. And there was like no backfill with that kind of knowledge. What we also saw is like Whitford was really good at, they would, if I had a custom, something I needed made, like I wanted a pumpkin orange or Christmas red or something like that, they would do it and they would tailor it like, yeah, I'll do this for you, but you need to slide me some of this other business too. I mean, if I'm going to make these 20 or 30 gallons for
Whoa,
you.
quid pro quo.
Yeah. And we,
Little
and we
market
were like,
share deal there.
yeah, and DuPont and Chemours, we just didn't play in that space, and we're steering the Titanic, and they were gobbling up those table scraps and grabbing business from us, and
Hmm.
what they've done now is they start rationalizing those things. I mean, PPG looks at it like, what, there's like two customers that buy this, it's not a lot of volume, it's gone, doing away with it. And then, PPG tried to look at this market and say, I'm used to selling 5 gallons in pallets full of material. They put this crazy pricing schedule together where a single gallon was the same cost as a 5 gallon because they wanted to sell 5 gallons. They didn't want to sell singles. And people are like, I don't always have to have a five. I mean, sometimes I just need a gallon or two to finish a job. And we were, when that first came out, I remember the groundswell, like customers hitting us like, "You're not going to believe this. Look what just happened." And they put this whole like dossier of information together about why they were doing it to like over justify, the
Mm.
move to that pricing schedule. So it was a crazy time. And that was around what, 2021, Mike? I think that
Yeah, I
happened
never
somewhere
saw any
around
of those
there.
communications. That's just hearsay. So we're not exactly sure. You know
But
what,
that,
Francesca, I think that, and ultimately what it was that we thought would be the case and proved to be the case is when, Whitford started off as a small business that grew into a very, healthy, larger business. And, but they always remained a very agile entrepreneurial company.
Hmm.
And when PPG took over, a big company takes that over, it's going to change. And the product
for sure.
rationalizations and policy changes and staff changes, all those sorts of things that happen in those big company spaces was vastly different than what people were used to with Dave's company. Is that,
Hmm.
is that the best way to describe it? And so
Yeah.
we were like waiting around. We were like couldn't wait for these changes to start trickling in because we felt that it leveled the playing field for us in terms of some of the things we work with Chemours, a big company. Like, so we knew that them losing that entrepreneurial spirit would be good for us, and it was.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, and because you do see PPG and Chemours are two titans really
Yes.
of
Yeah.
industry, so they
Mhm.
they are going to move differently, as you said, and that is going to affect the customers and the relationships with them. And I know that Whitford PPG is not the only competition you have. That just happens to be the number one. Obviously, a couple other names you've thrown out there: Daikin, Solvay, Di Cavero. Do you see that there's a lot of direct competition the way there is with PPG Whitford, or do you see that they compete kind of unevenly, being smaller manufacturers and providers?
Yeah, I mean, I see it more. I mean, Mike, unless you want to answer this, more uneven. Like Daikin, had specific products that would compete, like PFA powder, for example. But with Daikin, you kind of there was always like a little bit of a language barrier going on there because they were a Japanese company, I think, or at least over in Asia. And then with Solvay, I mean, they were going through distributors. Like they were kind of bouncing around there for a while and had a lot of instability. And as a manufacturer, your product's only as good as the people that are supporting you. And they really dropped it down a level for a period of time. And now they're not using that distributor anymore. But, they were just treating it like a customer service function. Like we all know that this is a technical sale. I mean, you just
Yeah.
don't, have somebody that doesn't know anything about coatings and be like, yeah, I sell Halar. What do you want to use it for? Or just buy it. You go on our website and buy it or what have you. So, it's a little more complicated than that, and so they took some hits there. Um, Elog is more like regional. It's maybe more so over in Europe. We run into it very infrequently over here.
Midwest.
So, but the Whitford portfolio was really the one because as Mike said earlier, a lot of our coatings were analogs. Like there was just, you could drop in, this coating for that one because they were so similar or had similar performance characteristics. So that was the one that we really bumped into so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think just to build on what Chris said, there are a lot of the other competitors really are more just niche specialty, either in terms of a limited product line of a couple different things that are great products. They do a great job manufacturing them, but either a limited product line, limited distribution capabilities, limited tech service, customer service. There's a lot of limitations, but for our customer base that's out there that needs some of these specialty systems and they're experts at applying and specifying all that, like yeah, they're great options for them to have in their shop. They
That
just don't
makes
get the full
sense.
service support, I guess, is the
Yeah.
big difference.
And I think a big part of that, maybe full service support that has grown to be more important recently, is in the regulatory part of the business. Because as I understand it, most manufacturers don't have a dedicated regulatory resource for them. And what's going on with PFAS and all of this stuff, it creates volatility for everyone in the business. So when I'm a coating shop, how do I look at this competition through that lens of regulatory, I guess, issues? Does somebody like Chemours or PPG fare better? Is it better to be with a smaller company that can adapt to changes in regulations really quickly and on the fly? Where does that land, Mike?
I think and that's a really that's a big question. And I think the best way I can describe it as it is such an ever-changing landscape today in the regulatory space that if you don't have somebody on your team or a team in your organization of people paying attention to what's happening, not just in the US state by state, but globally, you're going to be lost in a pretty quick amount of time. I mean, it changes a lot. So I feel very fortunate that Chemours has always been a market leader and for the fluoropolymer coatings and for fluoropolymers in general. They've always been a market leader in our industry in that space for the advocacy end of it and the regulatory end. So that's great because we have their support. But bringing it down to the logistics level, having Miguel Cardona on the team is a massive uptick in support staff because he's not only has 30 years in dealing with this stuff, but he's available to us for our customers on like the micro level, on to help them understand what the heck do I do when this survey from the government comes in or my local municipality or a big customer of mine. And I don't know how to answer these questions or fill them out, or what can I do to be more proactive in protecting my business? Like we can help you with that stuff. And this didn't used to be any part of my job not that long
Right.
ago. And now it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of it. And rightfully so. We have to be able to handle that. But I'm pleased that we're in a position where we can help people with that because I know a lot of manufacturers don't have that expertise and they don't have that support staff resource allocation there for their customers.
And to add just a little bit more to that is like, we always ask because people get hit with all kinds of different things. Is kind of the grapevine out there with PFAS, like what it's, bled into now or what this means. And you can go out on the internet and look things up and, your customer coming to you, like, this is what this person said. I'm not going to be able to do fluoropolymers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody said, like, where did you see that? We always are like, send us what you received that says that, because we'll gladly send it to Miguel, who then will go to Chemours or whatever to get a clearer picture as to what is getting tossed around out there. Because there's a lot of misinformation or just a lack of really accurate interpretation of what
Yeah.
has been laid down out there. And there was a lot of steam behind it, maybe really 2 years ago, Mike, and that has slowed a little bit as the
Mm-hmm.
advocacy, it's so hard to say, that portal where people are talking about applications and educating, where people are starting to go like, wow, fluoropolymers are more than just pans and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. They are in so many places I didn't even realize. So the education has really been the key part of slowing down some of these knee-jerk PFAS reactions, for sure.
And it's not just educating the customers. I'm sure there's also, the benefit of having a company as big as Chemours and as influential is got to be on the governmental side as well, because they can actually go and fight that fight on, that level, as well as provide maybe the answers or the support to you to provide to the customers. Am I getting that right?
100%.
100%. Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
And I think that's all great, but I also can imagine that if I am a coder and what I get in the mail scares me and makes me feel like I need to get an answer quickly about something, and Chemours is just by nature taking a long time because that's the size, that's what happens with that size company, to get a response, or they're taking a long time because they're making some major shift and it changes everything for them. I can't get a hold of anybody there in the manufacturing side. And isn't that horribly frustrating when I could probably go to a smaller company and maybe get a direct line to the owner or the president and be able to get these questions I have answered and letters signed? I mean, isn't that better service to be able to go directly to somebody in a small company rather than having to go through so many layers in a larger company like Chemours?